Greetings, ladies and melogents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series Accidentally Adopted. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Part 4, Chapter 10.5, The Loose End. In the turmoil of the recent takedown of a mafia, the station didn't exactly have a day or night, but nonetheless, there was something aboard that went bump in the darkness. The station had more experience with this creature, both in kind and particular, than any other station in the known galaxy. This was by virtue of the simple fact that the creature had visited this particular station before, once, for about 4 hours. That was a memorable visit for the more affluent residents, and had sparked an online debate about whether keeping exotic pets should be allowed, since the bipedal mammal had shattered a one-way window in a fit of rage, or in a desperate bid to escape an abusive test, depending on who you asked. In any case, the vet was culpable, except according to the trolls only pretending to be stupid. And the actually stupid, and the real question was what exactly he was guilty of. The debate only became more intense when it was revealed that the Star Satyrs had discovered that their pet was actually a sapient being and not a simple animal. Things got even more interesting in the station's debate scene, and even on the planet it orbited when a video of a bipedal mammal with red fur on its head and face dragging a quackal child out of a game of dart combat by her ear for cheating. The being stood a head shorter than the 8-year-old child, yet the conversation with her father went equally viral. The kindly gentleman asked why the adorable referee wasn't playing with the other children. It responded in a somewhat discordantly deep voice that it would be unfair for a grown man and combat veteran to completely stomp on the stationette children. When the man asked the little guy why he was dressed like a kid, "Because I'm short," became a very popular meme, along with "Down with the tolls." Even still, what the station had largely come to think of as an adorable little representative of a race of adorable little pre-FTL primitives was going bump in the shadows of the neglected lower levels. The fact that the cutie had been a major part of the recent rescue of nearly 1,000 hostages from a major mafia family hadn't really sunk into the public perception of the creature. It had already been going bump for nearly a week, hundreds laid in morgues as mute testimony to its wrath. Lieutenant Gregory George of the Among the Star Tides We Sing didn't know or care about the public's perception of him. Not as he picked his way through the stationers who largely had been left to a gentle mercies of the Mafia Station branch. Those who noticed him at all had to resist the urge to pat his head, which was at a convenient height for most of them to do so, and even still they made no attempt to hide their delight at the sight of him. If they knew his dark purpose, perhaps his fluid grace would be unsettling rather than the cutest damn thing ever. Or perhaps not. After all, many humans find seals cute despite what they do to penguins. Pling, click, zan, click, tick. Did not share the public's perception of the creature striding inexorably closer to him. No pling, click, zan, clack, tick had good reason to know just how dead the disturbingly adorable Greg was, and equally good reason to believe that he would be targeted by Greg next. A tactic that had worked on literally everyone else, a simple, safe, effective way to get the inferiors to fall in line. So his bosses had told him. Inferiors. The inferior mammal had put all 3 of his bosses in barely warm enough boxes without even a cushion to lounge on, and were made to subsist on Nutri-Blocks and water until their magistrates can hold trials. The Star Satyrs are trying them as pirate officers who had ordered an attack on one of their children. Plin, click, zan, clack, tick did not have any hope that his bosses would live to punish or protect him. He did know that the newly discovered primitive you can just dazzle with some junk had held every lost underboss responsible for touching his brother. He knew he had a limited amount of time to gather what contact data and coordinates could be useful, and his emergency stash of theobromine and caffeine powder. Enough to barter his way onto a less reputable ship going to the capital. From there he could just get out of Jakovia. He just had to hurry. Greg just had one little loose end to tie up. There was one last person responsible for what had happened to who he still thought of as Linus, though he knew his adopted brother's name was Yofdril. The rescue had gone even better than he had dared hope, but that wasn't the point. The point was that the criminal scum outside human space needed to learn a lesson Pete had taught all of humanity. You do not touch our brothers, not without consequences. The door to the shady lawyer's firm had been left ajar. How polite. Greg found the horrifying amalgamation of horse-sized spider centaur scuttling about his office in a frantic fury, tossing data chips into an open suitcase on his desk alongside some plastic bags of white powder. "Going somewhere?" Greg asked softly, as seafarer's negotiation was a soft language. Even still, Flynn Click Zan Clack Tick webbed himself. "Go on," Greg said softly as a breeze amongst headstones. "Get the translator." Flynn Click Zan Clack Tick suddenly regretted not buying a gun before the Starsetters had established martial law. With the burgeoning hope for talking his way out of the situation, he fumbled around his desk drawers until he found the external translator, a nearly obsolete device. But some of his ganger clients couldn't afford implants. "I'm sure that we can come to an Do you know the rules of command?" "I'm sorry?" "The first rule of command is pretty well known, so I thought you might have heard of it. It's never give an order that will not be obeyed. By the way, what does that have to do with... The less well-known second rule is credit and blame rise to the commander. And I want you to understand before we begin. But I am not military. You issued orders. The orders were obeyed. You would have accepted the accolades from your bosses. So why do you now shirk the blame from me? You don't... The trembling quadrupedal arachnid stammered in terror. Good. Now you know. This is because you touched my little brother. The good news is, not a single hair on his braid was out of place, so you get to keep well. The trouble with someone like you could lose 2 arms and still not be permanently disabled. So you get to keep ability to function in your profession, at a minimum. Let's go over your options. Options? Plin Click Zan Clack Tick squealed and clicked. Yes, options. Option 1, you resist and I drag you to a forgotten maintenance airlock and slowly depressurize it until you pass out. Then repeat until you become cooperative. Plin Click Zan Clack Tick trembled, and Greg continued. Option 2, you give me what I want and I take you to that airlock so that you can space yourself. Nice and quick. Plin Click Zan Clack Tick's terror subsided slightly, as death would be preferable to torture, then death. Option 3. You give me what I want, decide which limb you like least, and then go turn yourself into the magistrates. Once again, Plin Click Zan Clack Tick webbed himself. More embarrassingly, he was secreting the glistening oils that prevented him from sticking in his own webbing. What do you want? That scorched, googly-eyed void-sucker of a filthy poaching pirate. Big scar across his face, like this. I want him. Plin Click Zan Clack Tick blanched. Please. I want to know his favorite ports. I want to know his ship's aliases. I want his transponder codes. I want his voided name. You will give them to me. No. Anything else? You want money, caffeine, sex? I can get you your own... Greg's eyes went wide with fury, and his voice somehow became harder. I also want to know where your slaves are. The arachnid scuttled back until he bumped against the wall and panted to force more air through his book lungs. I am not a mammal. I didn't not do anything with it. I guess we'll go to that airlock. I don't want to die. Then give me what I want, Greg growled. And it seemed that Plin Click Zan Clack Ticks that the darkness of the office reached out and enshrouded the deceptively adorable biped. The pungent aroma of grief pheromones filled the air as Plin Click Zan Clack Ticks began to compile the information on a data chip. Are you literate? Yes. Seafarer's negotiation. Fine. Please, I'll just turn myself in and hope, please. See, here's the thing. You touched my brother, and that means that the other criminals need a lesson. A lesson you'll teach them by just how you look. Or maybe the story you tell about how you just voiding vanished. Either way, Touching my family will become a ghost story for the scum of the galaxy. Half an hour later, the Light of Justice in the darkness received another Mafia member, apparently one of the lieutenants, and in need of medical attention. The criminal had somehow suffered a crushing amputation and refused to speak on how of it. The magistrates and their retinue surmised that it must have been his subordinates turning on him. End of chapter. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Casper Arnholtz, Dragzoon W.R.E, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, Jon Creighton, and Sevaren Serberous. Thank you very much.